Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. First we're going to start with Kherson area and with Zaporozhye area. The Russians continue bombing and shelling the islands between Kherson and Oleshki, and on this video we see how the Russian Su-34 bombed this settlement, this island between two banks of the river with the guided bombs and X-34 missiles. The Russians reported, the author of that video reported that as a result of that strike 15 Ukrainian soldiers were wounded and one ammo depot was destroyed. And you know that this is very important to destroy the ammo depots between the islands because there is no normal connection between the mainland and the islands, and it is very difficult to get there some munition and so on. Every destroyed ammo depot is a very big benefit, a very big advantage of the site. Now we are moving to the north. We are going to the settlement by the name of Kazatskaya. The Russians continue bombing and shelling the Ukrainian positions on that bank of the river. And you know that when talking about the report of Ministry of Defense, almost every single day the Russians provide us a very big numbers of losses of the Ukrainian side. The Ukrainians have accumulated significant number of the force along their bank of the river. Maybe they try to make a view that they're planning to cross the river, but because of this tactic, this doctrine, the Ukrainians are suffering significant losses while being bombed by the Russians. Now we're moving to Zaporozhye area, and today we got maybe this is not the very fresh video, maybe this is an old video. The author of that video claims that the Russian drones, Russian FEP drones, were attacking the Ukrainian soldiers and Ukrainian armored vehicles during their withdrawing process from Petykhatki. So for now it's very difficult to understand whether this attack took place today, the previous night, or this is just an old video that shows us the same situation from another angle. Now we're moving to Bradley Square, and today we got a lot of very interesting update. This night the Ukrainians launched another offensive operation, very powerful offensive operation. We start receiving updates somewhere at 5 a.m. The Russians reported that Ukrainians launched offensive operation at 5 a.m. and the Ukrainians were using tanks and Bradleys. Up to 15 armored vehicles were heading in direction of Robotyne. Later at 6 a.m. we start receiving first photo confirmations. For example, in this video we see that at least 2 armored vehicles was already burned by 6 a.m. and the Russians reported that by 6 a.m. they managed to destroy at least 4 tanks, and they managed to destroy one platoon of infantry. Somewhere at 7 a.m. we got another update that the total quantity of vehicles that Ukrainians were using during that attack was around 20 pieces, and 5 of those vehicles was already destroyed by the Russians. And somewhere at 8 a.m. we got more photo and video confirmations of complete defeat of the Ukrainians. They lost a lot of armored vehicles, a lot of tanks, but the Russians are saying that the Ukrainians didn't stop. They continue attacking and continue bringing more and more reserves. So as I understand, today there are going to be very fierce clashes during the day. The Ukrainians are going to use to involve more forces in the battle for Robotyne, and probably there is a very high chances that maybe today the Ukrainians will be able to enter Robotyne itself, or at least to bypass this settlement from the east and to get to the south in direction of Novopokrovka. So we'll see. Anyway, today is going to be a very important day. Furthermore, the Ukrainians continue bombing and shelling the Russian positions, the Russian artillery systems that the Russians are using were using to support their forces and to attack the offensive Ukrainian forces. In this video we see how the Ukrainians destroyed another howitzer gets in B. Now we are moving further we are going to probably to Klishchiivka, yes, to Artyomovsk and Klishchiivka. During the previous night we got more updates from this bridgehead. Of course, the most important updates are coming from settlement Klishchiivka itself. Some sources are saying that the Russians have already left this settlement. Some sources are saying that the Russians are still there. When talking about geolocations and geolocated video, we got just one from the north and northwestern part of Klishchiivka. This is the Russian soldiers who were moving across this settlement, this village, somewhere in the vicinity of the railroad station. And basically this is the only confirmation telling us that the Russians are still there. We got another video from the southwestern part of the settlement. On this video we see how the Russians were they were making some kind of reconnaissance with the drones above the settlement, trying to find the Ukrainian positions. So as you can see, according to this video, the Russians were making this reconnaissance operation all over the entire Klishchiivka, not just over the western part or southern part. The Russian satellites, the Russian drone that were flying above this territory was trying to investigate and was trying to find the Ukrainian positions, not just in the southern but all over the Klishchiivka. So basically this is some kind of another video confirmation that probably the Russians were forced to step back from the settlement, and currently the settlement is in the gray zone. Some Ukrainian sources reported that Andriivka fell under pressure of Ukrainian forces, but later we got the video from the Ukrainian side, from the same direction, how the Ukrainian drone was attacking the Russian tank. So basically this video confirms that Andriivka still remains under the Russian control and that the Russians haven't left the settlement. Very fierce fightings continues on the northern part of Artyomovsk bridgehead. The Russians published a very interesting video. It's the freshest, probably the freshest video of a domino fortification on the western part of Artyomovsk. As you can see, almost buildings of course are damaged, but yet these buildings still a very nice area, very nice stronghold that Ukrainians will be forced to capture if they want to return control. There are a lot of fortifications. Even if Klishchiivka fall, it doesn't mean that Ukrainians will be able to enter and capture Artyomovsk, because the western fortification, Domino and so on, is very powerful strongholds, and it's highly unlikely the Ukrainians are able to capture these strongholds with 1 or 2 attacks, or even in a week or something like this. Furthermore, the Russians continue counter-artillery duels in this area, and the Russians published a lot of videos showing how they were bombing and shelling the Ukrainian positions on the northern flank. Basically, according to information we got, the Russians managed to repel the Ukrainian attacks on the northern flank and managed to suppress any activity from the Ukrainian side. On this video, for example, we see how the Russians managed to discover and destroy Ukrainian artillery system in the vicinity of Markova that Ukrainians were using for supporting their offensive forces in the direction of Yahidne. And also we got another video how the Russians managed to destroy another Ukrainian M777 howitzer that Ukrainians were using to support their offensive operation in direction of Klishchiivka. So what we can say for now, that on the morning of the local time of the 26th of July, probably the Russians have left Klishchiivka. This area is in the gray zone, and the Ukrainians haven't entered the settlement, just the Russians moved towards more reliable positions along the railroadways. And the Ukrainians yet haven't entered the settlement as well. Now we're moving to the north, and some videos, geolocate videos we got from Kremenaya Forest. The Russians reported that they launched significant offensive operation in this area and managed to capture more strongholds and more Ukrainian fortifications. Yet we haven't received any video or photo confirmations of that. But if you remember, we haven't received the same video and photo confirmation from Karamzinovka bridgehead. But now we see that the Russians managed to develop significant bridgehead, managed to penetrate the Ukrainians' defense belt and to advance further. So basically the Russians took a decision to keep silence in this area, not to provide information, because they don't want to geolocate themselves. First of all, of course, they don't want to show the types of weapon they use and the force as well. So even if the Russians are advancing there, I believe that we're going to see the first video and photo confirmations of that maybe in a week or in 2, when the Russians will be able to bypass some region and some significant square of the territory. And probably that's it about this local situation. And we got also a few videos from the border between Kharkiv and Belgorod and the Russian Federation. On this video we see how the Russians managed to discover another Ukrainian position in this area, and as a result of artillery strike the Russians managed to destroy another Ukrainian position of the forces, or probably the Ukrainian ammo depot. I don't know, I don't think that this is very important operations, because as you can see, most of the buildings in this area are completely wasn't damaged, so it's not a problem for the Ukrainians to change their positions. And of course, very fierce clashes and bombings continues on the border between Sumy and Russia. Neither the Russians nor the Ukrainians are crossing this border, but there are very fierce artillery duels, and something tells me that either the Russians and the Ukrainians use the Sumy and Kharkiv area as a training centers for their artillery squads. Like before sending the artillery forces to, let's say, Bakhmut or Zaporozhye, the Russians trained their forces in Sumy and Kharkiv during the counter-artillery duels with the enemy's forces. And that's it for this short video. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.